What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. It's that time of the year again, the World Junior Championship. And with that being said, there's top prospects to look out for at this tournament in the 2023 WJC tournament. So today we're going to be dissecting the players that you guys should, keep an eye on that have been drafted by teams in previous drafts or have yet to be drafted and are most likely to be drafted at the 2023 NHL draft. So, Luca, let's take it away.
Yeah, so I mean, we're gonna start off with Canada early on here. I think if you pay attention to World Juniors, I mean, let's make it pretty clear and concise here. There's really a few guys that you want to pay attention to. Obviously, Conor Bedard and Adam Fantilli are the two big names that you really want to pay attention to, especially if you're interested in what the 2023 draft is going to look like. These two are projected to potentially be the 1 and 2 overall picks in the draft this year. So Canada is going to be a fun team to watch, and both Conor Bedard and Fantilli are going to be two guys that I think are going to have a lot of eyes on both of them. Bedard plays for the Regina Pats and Fantilli for University of Michigan in their respective leagues. The other one to watch out for in Canada as well is Shane Wright. How is he going to do? Not playing much in the NHL this season. Had a really good stint in the AHL when he got sent down. It's an opportunity for him to break out in this World Junior tournament as well and kind of prove to people that, he still is the real deal and that there is still hope that he will turn into something good. And I think it's just a World Junior tournament that'll benefit him because he'll play top minutes. He'll be playing with good players. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do. And I believe that he started the tournament, and I believe he still is on the top line with Conor Bedard. So having both those guys playing together is going to be a deadly duo for Canada going into this tournament. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Connor Bedard being the consensus like number one overall pick heading into the 2023 draft. Currently has 64 points in 28 games in the WHL.
which is
There's a lot
ridiculous.
of expectations for him to perform, and you know, looking back at the last, World Junior tournament, you know, he was out playing Shane Wright. Right before that, the whole COVID thing happened and they had to stop the tournament. He was out playing Shane Wright, and
Yeah,
Shane Wright was nowhere to be seen or heard from. Um, so let's hope that Shane Wright, definitely has a lot more in the tank this year. He definitely has to prove a lot of haters wrong. He was fantastic in the AHL in his little stint there. And then he scored his first goal in the NHL against the team that did not draft him, the Montreal Canadiens. So
yeah.
there's a lot to be desired for Shane Wright, but Connor Bedard, there's high expectations. He's considered to be a generational talent, and Adam Fantilli is the guy that's supposed to be going second overall. So maybe, I mean, not maybe, but obviously, no one wants to be second pick. Everyone wants to be the first guy, right? So
Yeah.
Adam Fantilli may, push, scouts to probably reconsider their pick for Bedard and probably go for Fantilli as the consensus number one pick. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting too, and I'm gonna make it quick with Canada just because honestly, if you watch pretty much the World Juniors, Canada, every single player on this team is basically a guy to watch. In the sense that, look, if you're a fan of the Canadians, if you're a fan of LA, if you're a fan of pretty much any team in the NHL that's got a Canadian player on it, you're gonna want to watch their team. I know Rangers fans are gonna be paying attention to Brendan Othman. Dallas is going to pay attention to Logan Stankoven. There's a few guys there as well that are going to be really interesting. If you're a Chicago fan, you've got three here in Kevin Korchinski, Nolan Allen, and Colton Dock, who's Kirby Dock's brother.
There's
So
also three for the Ducks as well.
yeah, there's three for the Ducks, and Olin Zellweger being one of them, Nathan Gaucher being the other one, and then obviously, who's the third one on this list? I can't. Why can't I get? No, there's only two for the Ducks, I believe.
Oh,
Zellweger and Zellweger and Nathan Gaucher.
oh, my bad.
McTavish was supposed to be on this list, but anyways, I want to move on to the second team, and a team that I'm personally super, 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 super excited to watch, and that's Finland. And the reason I'm excited to watch Finland is because there's actually one guy on this list that is the youngest player going into this tournament, and that's Aaron Kiviharju. Now, if people don't know who, you're going to be like, who the heck is this guy? So basically, interesting story about this guy. He's actually 16 years old, and he's going to be playing on the Finland World Junior team this year. He is projected to be the first overall pick in next year's NHL draft. So not 2023, but 2024. And what's interesting about him is that although he's the youngest defenseman, he's played 6 games in the Liga this year. He's dominated his junior team as well. He's a guy that at 16 years old, I think can really be a big staple for Finland's defense. And for a team that's really lacking on defense and it's not as quality as it's been in recent years, I think he's going to be a guy that maybe doesn't play consistent minutes of 20 minutes a night, but he'll be a guy that's going to be really excited to watch for him. And then just moving on to the forward core, you've got Oliver Kapanen, who was drafted by the Canadiens, Joakim Kemmel, Ville Koivunen, Brad Lambert as well, just amongst a few that are there on the list. So I'm excited for Finland. They've always been a team that has surprised people in the World Juniors, and I'm going to be honest, I was kind of disappointed not to see Kasper Halttunen make the Finland team. I thought he had a shot. He's a guy that's going to get drafted in the first round this year for Finland. So him not being on this list is a little bit disappointing. But like I said, the big names on this list are going to be Joakim Kemmel and Brad Lambert. And I'm excited to see what both of them are going to do for their teams. Brad Lambert last year had a really good World Junior tournament. I'm expecting much of the same this year. And obviously, if you're a Nashville fan, Joakim Kemmel's a guy that is going to be all eyes on him because he's expected that if his season finishes early this year, he may end up playing some games for Nashville towards the end of the season. So that might be something to watch out for, especially if you're a Nashville fan.
And alluding to what you were saying about Brad Lambert, he was drafted 30th overall by the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
So taking a look at him, being drafted 30th overall, they took a chance on him. He did tear it up in the 2022 World Junior tournament, but it was canceled. He had 5 points in 2 games. So there's yet to be a lot desired with him too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, he's a guy that I think going into this tournament is going to want to prove to everybody that, look, the game that he played last year and how well he did last year, I think is going to translate. And I think he's actually got a lot of talent. And the Jets could potentially, I know that the World Junior tournament doesn't, decide everything, but Brad Lambert can take this tournament by storm again this year and really cement himself as potentially a steal in last year's draft. Moving on to Sweden, who, what? Obviously it's not as good as it was, in previous years. They don't really have Jesper Wallstedt on this list. But one thing that they do have on this list is they've got a lot of depth. And what I mean by that is if you look at their team, one guy that I'm really interested to see how he plays is Adam Engström, who was a draft pick by the Montreal Canadiens this season. Kalle Odolis is another one. Elias Pettersson, which is actually funny because he got drafted by the Canucks and has no relation to the other Elias Pettersson
which they so happen to be both Swedish as well.
Yeah, which is funny. And then there's Axel Sandin-Pellikka. Now, Axel Sandin-Pellikka is an interesting one because he's actually an offensive defenseman. And what's interesting about him is that he's getting drafted first round in 2023 this year. And he's an interesting one because he's a guy that could potentially be the best player that comes out of this draft on defense. So it's going to be exciting to see what he does at this tournament. He's going to have a lot of eyes on him. And one guy that I'm actually surprised omission that's not there is Theo Lindestein, who was also one of the Swedish defensemen who's projected to go in the first round, late second round, from what I've seen from a lot of scouts. It looks like, he just missed out, so that's going to be unfortunate for him. In terms of the forward core, there's one guy on this list that everybody should keep an eye on because, we talked about Conor Bedard and we talked about Adam Fantilli. Let's talk about Leo Carlson.
Yeah.
Leo Carlson is potentially, up there with Adam Fantilli. They're probably neck and neck in terms of projection, right? It can go either way between him and Bedard. He's looked at as an elite center. I'm excited to see what Leo Carlson brings to this World Junior team, especially with the likes of Jonathan Lekkerimäki, Philip Lysol, Liam Ogren, Noah Östlund, and Isaac Rosén, who are all first-round picks as well. So this is a Swedish team that is heavy loaded on first-round picks, and they've got a guy who's potentially expected to go top 3. This is a really stacked Sweden team, and they're going to be a team that might give Canada problems because they're in the same group. They're going to give Canada problems, but I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. And also, if you're a Sweden fan in general, or just if you're a team like the Boston Bruins, for example, or even to some extent the Buffalo Sabres, who have Isaac Rosén and Noah Östlund, you're going to be paying close attention to these guys because these are guys that are going to be future players for your team. And obviously, if you're the Canucks as well, Lekaramaki and Elias Pettersson are two guys that are examples of what you want in the future for you. So those are the guys that I would say would be watched out for in terms of Sweden.
Yeah,
Chris, I don't
and
know if
Leo
you want
Carlson, being 6'3", nearly 200 pounds, it's really hard to contain a player like that.
to.
And
Yeah,
having 14 points, 25 games, in the SHL, this is a guy that's playing with men, right?
yeah.
So, there's high expectations for him. He could be. I'm not gonna say like he's comparable to Slavkovsky, who also played with men, because I do believe that Leo Carlson is better than Slavkovsky. Don't shoot the messenger. Just saying. Um, yeah, this is a guy that's competing with Adam Fantilli, who's very skilled as well for the second spot. So, I think this tournament, it's not necessarily going to determine who goes in the top three, but it's definitely going to play somewhat of a factor.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that not only that, but it not just plays a factor, it allows, everybody to see the top three picks and really make a decision for themselves as to where they believe those three can go. I'm not saying this tournament makes the whole decision, but it's definitely fun to see, having a guy like Leo Carlson, Fantilli, and Bedard all being in this tournament. I think helps, and I think if you're someone who's scouting, it's going to help you determine it a little bit more. I want to move on to Czechia. One guy that actually um, isn't really drafted and actually, isn't really a name that was talked about a lot, and that's Thomas Suchanek, who's the goalie for Finland. He's an interesting one because he's 19 years old. I was actually surprised he wasn't drafted last year with how good his World Junior tournament was. I'm expecting some big things out of him this year in this tournament. Obviously, the big name on this list is David Jiricek, who's having a really good year in Cleveland in the AHL. Played a couple of games for Columbus as well. He's a fantastic defenseman. Columbus really got themselves a good player there. But if you're Columbus, you actually have two. You have him and Stanislav Svozil, who's the other one on the decor for them. So those are two guys that if you're a Columbus fan, you should pay attention to. If you're a Sens fan, Thomas Hamara is on that list as a guy that you can look at for Czechia. But let's move on to the forward core because there's two guys that are really interesting. There's Yuri Kulich, who again, if you're a Buffalo fan in this tournament, you should be excited because you've got a lot of prospects that you could watch. Yuri Kulich is another one who's played for Rochester this season. But there's one other name on this list that I'm really excited to talk about, and that's Edward Saleh. Saleh is an interesting one because he's a guy that's been kind of up and down in the draft projections this season. He's expected to be a first round pick. Some people have him in the top 10, some people have him in the top 20. I know Craig Button is really high on him. I'm excited to see what type of World Junior tournament he has, right? Because he's the type of guy that's got a lot of offensive skill, a lot of ability, but what's the secondary part of his game? Without the skill, without him on having the puck on his stick, what does he do well, right? So this is going to be an interesting an interesting tournament for him because it's going to allow him to really cement himself as potentially being a top 10 pick in this draft. So he's got a lot to prove, I think, for scouts that are going to be there. And I think if he can have a good tournament and be, a leading scorer for Czechia, but also, fix up his defensive game a little bit more and add some more pizzazz to his game as well, in the sense where it's not just, offensively gifted with the puck, but also plays a good two-way game and a 200-foot game. I think he could be a really good a player for this tournament. And not only that, he can bolster up his draft stock as well. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I see it. I don't know if you want to chime in on anything for Czechia,
Not really. I was gonna move on
the
to
States,
Germany next,
or
and
Germany.
yeah, and talk about Julian Luntz. He's a player that I do believe that he's making his debut essentially, right? With
Yeah,
Team Germany. He had an
absolutely.
injury that kept him off the ice for
Yeah.
about like what 7 months.
Mhm.
So he's in full form this year. He has 6 points in 13 games in the DELE
Yeah,
league right now. So he's
in
on pace to
Germany.
hit nearly 20 by the end of the season. So we'll
Yeah.
see if that continues. But a lot of players, I mean, a lot of fans are probably looking forward to seeing a guy like Julian Luntz, what he's capable of doing on a team that's not as stacked as Canada or Sweden or USA. Is
Yeah.
he going to prevail and be able to carry Germany and become an underdog team because of his performance? I
That's
mean,
it.
we'll see what happens there.
Second round pick from Arizona last year. I'm excited to see what he does as well. I want to move on to some quick ones before we get on to Slovakia and the States. Um, Really quickly, for Switzerland, there's really one guy that I want to pay attention to. That's Lian Bichel, who was the 18th overall pick by Dallas this year. He's really the guy for Switzerland. It's going to be really up to him. It's going to go all towards him. The offense is going to rely on him. So he's got a big role to play this year. And, there was a lot of people that called it a reach pick last year when he got drafted. I'm excited to see what he's capable of bringing in this tournament for a Swiss team that isn't as stacked and as solid as it was in previous years. I'm hoping he has a good tournament as well. And yeah, and just in terms of Austria, really, really quickly, there's really one guy on this list that I'm excited to see. And obviously, if we're Habs fans, so it's going to be curiosity. But Vincent Rohrer, who's plays for the Ottawa 67s, he's on the World Junior team. So excited to see what he brings to the table on a team in Austria that isn't that good. Let's move on to the States and Slovakia. I'm going to go to Slovakia first. We'll leave the States for last. Slovakia have an interesting list of players because there's actually three guys on this list, or four guys on this list that I think people are going to want to watch. Obviously, if you're a New Jersey Devils fan, Simon Nemec, who was the second overall pick last year, he's going to lead Slovakia's defense this year, and be a big force for them on the blue line. And like I said before, kind of with Lian Bichel, he's going to be the guy that's going to generate the offense for the defense. But not only that, he's going to play on the power play. He's going to be playing a lot of minutes for them, so he's got a lot of expectations. Not only that, but on the forward core, there's two guys here that are really interesting. Philip Meshar, who was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens last year, 25th overall, and Dalibor Dvorsky, who last year didn't really have the best tournament in the World Juniors last year. But I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do now and what he can bring to this Slovakia team. He's a guy that's expected to go top 10. He's well liked by a lot of scouts. I think he has to prove to people that he is a top 5 talent. And I think this tournament, especially with Philip Meshar and also with Adam Sakura, who was drafted by the Rangers, it's an opportunity for those three guys, especially, to really make name for themselves, and not only make a name for themselves, but be consistently good at what they do. And I think you're excited because Slovakia's got a lot of really good players coming up. So seeing those three guys on the World Junior team, I think, just brings some excitement for those teams and also for Slovakian fans too.
Yeah, and moving on to the last team, we're going to cover the USA.
Yeah,
This team's as stacked as Canada, in my opinion. You have Ryan Chesley, who was drafted by the Washington Capitals in the second round, 37th overall.
yeah,
You have Logan Cooley, drafted third overall in the first round by the Arizona Coyotes. You have Cutter Gauthier, drafted by Philadelphia Flyers, fifth overall in the first round.
yeah.
This is a stacked team
Lane Hudson
offensively.
as well,
And you have
who
Lane Hudson, who was arguably the steal of the 2022 NHL draft, drafted by the Montreal Canadiens in
and
the second round.
and Luke Hughes as well, who
Yeah,
Jack Hughes' brother. He's another one that's on this list. There's really a lot of players for the States. I know that we talked a lot about Canada. For the States, there's Charlie Stramel, who's getting drafted this year for expected to be a first round talent. Gavin Brindley as well, another one who's expected to be a first round talent. So two guys to pay attention to. Jimmy Snuggerud, who was drafted by St. Louis last year. Excited to see what he's able to bring. And obviously, if you're the Jets, well, there's Chaz Lucius and Rutger McGroarty as well, who are two guys that were drafted by Winnipeg. So States have a good team. I think that honestly, them and Sweden, I think, are the two teams that are going to challenge Canada in this World Junior. But like I said, Canada, Sweden, and the States are all really stacked. I think Slovakia's got an underrated team this year, and Finland and Czechia might be two teams to pay attention to as well. So those
yeah.
are kind of the guys that I think we should pay attention to. Um, you know, those are really the players that you're going to get the chance to really see. And guys, let us know in the comments below as well. Who are you excited to see? Who's the biggest prospect that you're excited to see? Obviously Bedard and Fantilli, but don't name those two. Name an outside of the box guy that you believe is going to have a breakout tournament. So
Yeah, and
that's
there's also
anything.
guys that were drafted by teams in last year's draft as well. So,
Yeah,
look out for some of those prospects already drafted. And for a lot of fans that are currently, supporting teams that are a bottom tier team in the top five, there's going to be some interesting names to look out for and hope
100%.
that you guys win the lottery so you could get a guy like Conor Bedard, for example, or Adam Fantilli or Leo Carlson. So we'd like to hear your thoughts as well. Who would you prefer to draft with your pick? Anyways, guys, we hope that you enjoyed this episode and our coverage on the top prospects to watch out for at the 2023 World Junior Tournament. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Young Guns Podcast. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you soon.